of our Siddur, Sim Shalom. And I ask you to please rise for our morning blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'zekvivina l'havkim ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mabish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roch ha'aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechem et tzedei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasali kord sword ki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozi Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oti Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten la'ev koach. May be seated. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam Hi. V'hi ratzon b'fanech Adonai Eloheinu Hi. Utenenu hayom uv'chol yom lechein ul hesed rachamim beinecha uvenei koroheinu v'tignol hasedim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. Le'olam yedem. We're on page 105. Avana b'britzecha b'nei Avraham Adad Yaakov. Ashreinu matav chelkeinu umanayim goraleinu mafal Yerushateinu. Ashreinu she'anaknu mashkimim u'marivim erev v'boker ve'omrim b'mayim b'chol yom
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Kadesh et shimcha magdash et shemecha v'kadesh et shimcha balomecha uvishuatzecha tanim et abikranenu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh et shimcha barabim.
Amen. Page 107.
Jerusalem. Kiddushin, page 110. Yiratzon menefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu shititen chalkenu b'toratecha v'nimit habedav shel Aharon Kohen ohev shalom rodef shalom ohev ebriot u'mekarban laTorah. Kaddish to Rabbanan for mourners and those observing a yortzeit can be found on page 111. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divara kirutei ve'amlik malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olalmei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kudusha b'richu ve'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidei ve'al kol Talmidei ve'al kol man da'askim be'oraita di ve'atra hadain v'di v'kol atar v'atar Yehei lachon shlama rabba hina v'hizda v'rachamin v'chayin arichin unzona revicha umforkana mikodam avuhon devishmaya ve'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Osei shalom imromav hu barachamav ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru.
Amen.
Amen. A psalm for Shabbat, page 112.
מזמור שיר חנוכת
Hayom
הבית.
yom Shabbat kodesh.
היום יום שבת קודש.
מזמור של יום השבת, טוב להודות לנו, הגיב הבוקר הצדקה. מה גם אם עושה כהנה? יצא מעולם. צדיק תמר יפרח הודינו בספר דשנים רנים יהיו להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא עוולתה בו. Page 120, a psalm for the morning. מזמור לשיר חנוכת
מזמור שיר חנוכת הבית לדוד, הרומים אלוהים. בכל יום וברכך לשם אדוני.
זמרו אדוני חסידיו ולקודשו כי רגע בפועל חיים ברצונו דרב. הפקת מספינו לחולי, פתחת שקי ותזרני שמחה. למען ישגבו ולא ידום, אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 121. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
Ve'alma divara kirute ve'amlik malchute. V'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. ויתהדר ויתהלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה
בריחו.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
Let's all now please rise, page 122. Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh b'reshit, Baruch mevei oseh, Baruch ezekayem.
ברוך האלוהים וקיים לנצח, ברוך פודם מציל, ברוך שמו.
Baruch atem lecha olam, ha'elam lecha v'fi amo b'yishpah. יחיד חי העולמים, מלך מושבע כמפרי עד שמו הגדול. ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מגולה ותשבחות. May be seated. הודו לאדוני כי דו נשבע. שירו לו, זמרו לו, שיקרו לו, תפקידו, בשם קודשו ישמח. זרע ישראל עבדו בני יעקב וחיריו, הוא אדוני אלוהינו בכל מצוותיו, זכרו לנו לריתו, דבר ציוונו. כי כל אלוהי העמים אלילים ואדוני שמיים עשה עוד דברים לפניו עוזבים
אהבו לנו כבוד ועוז, אהבו לנו כבוד שמו.
ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ומלך אדוני מלך ירמה אדוני כי טוב כי לעולם לצדו ביום רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו לקודשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו והוא רחום יכבר בו ולא ישחית והרבה להשיב אפו ברחמתו אל ישראל הנפלאים לעם. Page 126. אדוני צבאות אשר מותח בך אדוני הושיע המלך יננו ויום קורנו הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך ורם 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 ונשם ורם ונשם עד העולם הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך ורם 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 ונשם ורם ונשם עד העולם נפשנו יצא אדוני זרמיהו כי ווקסו ממנו כי בשם קודשו בטחנו יביא הזדך אדוני אשריהם שככה לו אשריהם שאדוני אלוהיו ואני בחסדך בדקתי אגל בישועתך אשירה לאדוני כי גמל עלי. We now rise and turn to page 132 as we sing together. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo. Hodu le'Elohei ha'elokim, ki le'olam hasdo. Hodu l'Adonai Adonim, ki le'olam hasdo. Le'osei orim gidolim, ki le'olam hasdo. Et Hashem memshelet bayom, ki le'olam hasdo. Et hayareach v'kochavim, le'memshelo b'layla. Le'molech amo b'midbar, ki le'olam hasdo. Le'makei melachim gedolim, ki le'olam hasdo. Vayaharog melachim adilim, ki le'olam hasdo. Ve'natan atzam lachala, ki le'olam hasdo. Nachala le'Yisrael avdo, ki le'olam hasdo. Nay, 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 ki le'olam hasdo. Noten lechem lechol b'asar, ki le'olam hasdo. Hodu le'el hashamayim, ki le'olam hasdo. Nay, 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 ki le'olam hasdo. May be seated. We now turn to page 136 for Ashrei. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha od yareducha sela. Ashrei shekakalo, Ashrei hamsharanai Elohav. Tehillah leDavid mincha Elohai hamelech va'avarcha Hashem la'olam va'ed. B'chol yom uvrachecha v'lasem. Atar kivarach v'lasem kama zizek. Tavarna helmas yadir. Malchut techema. Einik v'tech. Tehillat Adonai be'pi v'yivarech v'asar Shem kodsho le'olam va'ed. V'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah. Let us now turn to page 141 and sing once more. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, Berkiyahu Zo, hallelujah, Bigvurotav, hallelujah, Kirov Gudlo, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'teika shofar. Hallelujah, b'neva v'chinor. Hallelujah, b'tof u'machol. Hallelujah, b'merim ve'yugav. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei truah. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei truah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kol anshema tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol anshema tehallelujah. Hallelujah. 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 Let us please rise. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai Yerushalayim, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elokim Elohei Yisrael, Osei nifla levado. Uvaruch Shem kavod le'olam, Yivei malek kavado et kol haaretz.
Amen ve'amen.
Vayavarech David.
Vayavarech David Adonai le'nei kol
We're on
ha'kahal.
page 142. Atahu Adonai ha-Elohim asher b'chartam b'Avraham ve'yotzeitu merkaz dim v'sata shemo Avraham u'matata levavon eman lefanecha v'karoti merobeti te'eretz v'hayam b'kata lifneihem v'yivaru b'tokam v'yavasha v'edrodfeihem yishakta b'imsolot kemo even b'mayim azim Vayosh Adonai bayom hahu et Yisrael Mitzrayim. Vayar Yisrael Mitzrayim Mosafat hayam. Vayar Yisrael et hayagrola asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim. Vayirham et Adonai. Vayaminu v'Adonai. Uv Moshe Abdo.
As yasher Moshe u'bnei Yisrael.
Et hashira
Page
zol
143.
Adonai v'imru lemor.
השיר על אדוני כי גהוגה סוס ורוחבו רמה בים עוזי וזמרדיה ויהי לישועה עוזי וזמרדיה ויהי לישועה
Ozi vezimradia vayehi lishua Ozi vezimradia vayehi lishua Ki la'Adonai ha'malucha u'Moshe b'goyim ha'lamoshim par ha'tzion ishpor Esav v'haytar Adonai ha'malucha v'haya Adonai l'melech kol ha'aretz b'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Please be seated.
Page 145. Nai 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 נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו אין לנו מלך אלא אתה אלוהינו Hier vielen wir euch an der Jamschmann. In der Nacht muss ich mir nicht mehr Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloheinu. Mitzrayim gulotanu Adonai Eloheinu v'beit v'adim gulotanu. Nehalelcha und shbechacha und fa'ercha und v'ragat shem kodshecha kamor leDavid. Barki nafshi et Adonai v'kol korovai et shem kodsho. Ha'ahem v'tatu morzecha hagado b'gvot shemecha. Hagibor l'netzach v'nora b'norotecha. Ha'melech ha'yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa.
Page 147.
Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo.
Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo.
V'katuv raneinun tzadikim ba'Adonai laisharim navat tehila. Fi sharim titalal uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach ufilshon chasidim titromam uvekerev kedoshim titkadash uvemachalot beribot amacha beit Yisrael verina yitpa'a shimcha malkeinu bechol dor vador שכן כל בת, כל היצורים לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו, ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדל, לברך, להלל ולקלס, הכל דברי שירו ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך, לעד מלכנו, האל המלך.
Page 148.
ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודות אדון הנפלאות,
הבוחר בשירי זמרה,
מלך אל חיי העולמים.
Let us please rise for Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ועמד דברה קידותי וימליק מלכותי, וחיי כל ובימי כל וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ואמרו ינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה. בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמינה בעלמא ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
Let us please be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יזורך חושך עושה שלום ובורא את הכל.
Page 150.
הכל ידעוך
והכל ישבחו בן קדוש כאדוני.
וזרע יוצר הכל הנפותח בכל יום. אין קרחך ואין זועתך, אפס פתיך ומדומה לך. אין קרחך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זרעך מכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס פתיך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דום לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה גודלו וטובו. מלא עולם דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. המתגאל חיות הקודש בנר ובכבוד, על מרחבו זכות ומישור
לבני חיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו,
יצרם
בדעת, בבינה ובשכל, כוח וגבורה. נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל.
מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נואי זיוום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים באימה רצון קונם. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמות עולה ורינה, לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש. ויזרח אורה והתקין צורת הלבנה, שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרם תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש, לאל אשר שבח ומעשים
ולאשר שבת מכל המעשים.
Page 152. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך, ועל מרור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא
בורא
קדושים,
קדושים ישתבח שמך.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים באמל ורצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם קדושה ותורה, בשירה וזמרה, מברכים ומשבחים, ומפארים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים. את שם האל המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, קדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליכם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ראש המנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה מרק ראשה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. ואופנים וחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומת משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נימו איתנו למלך מלך זמנו. המחדש בטובו בכל יום תאמין מעשה בראשית, כאמור לעושה הורים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. Page 154, let's sing together. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ויתרה עמלת עלינו. באבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו למדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בליבנו להבין, להשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד ולמד, לשמוע ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך ואהבה. והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו. כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובאנו וקראת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת. להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל אשר.
ויהי שמות ותשע מצאתם את ארצכם. Something with a variety. Luke Tav Tamam is updated. Vayom Tzitzi. Limantis. Tzitzit. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Page 157.
לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וכיסונה כל מלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת רוב חיים.
ולברב חיים וקיימים נאמנים ונחמדים לעולמי עולמים, על אבותינו ועלינו על בנינו.
אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו, יוצרנו תשועתנו, כבודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך. הן אלוקים זולתך, עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם.
מגן מושיע לבניהם מגרים בכל דור ודור.
אשרי איש שמך.
אשרי איש שמך.
ממצרים גדולתנו אלוהינו, בית עבדים כלתנו. עוזר שבגאולנו. תהילות לאל עליון ברוך הוא ומבורך, משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לך ענו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף פלא. שירה חדשה, שיבו גאולים לשמך שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Let us please rise.
צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדקן אומך יהודה וישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amen. We pray the Amidah for Shabbat beginning on page 159.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot, U'mevii Goel Livnei B'nechem L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava. Melech Ozer Ufokir Moshiach Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayem Eitim Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaGashem, Mechakel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayem Eitim Berachamim Rabim, Someg Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, Umidol Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Venemanata Lehachayot Meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye HaMeitim. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אז בכל רעש גדול Sim leumat serafim, leumata Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Evod Adonai Mimkomo. Mimkomcha makenu tofia, vetimloch aleinu kimechakim anachnu lach. Matai timloch be'etzion, bekarov be'amenu le'olam va'et tishkon. Titkadal v'titkadash b'tok Yerushalayim ercha, ledor v'ador u'lenetzach netzachim. Ve'einenu tir'eina malchutecha, karavar amor b'shirei uzecha. Al yedei David, al yedei David, Mashiach tzidkecha. Yimloch Adonai leolam, Elohai Tzion ledor vador. Hallelujah, ledor vador naki godlecha, ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lemushlei olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol v'kadosh ata. Baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh.
If you finish praying the Amidah, you may be seated. We're going to continue with Kaddish Shalem, page 167. Amen.
Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'ram v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitaleh shemeri kedusha
Brechu.
le'elam min kol brakata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran ve'alma v'imru
Amen.
Titkabat zlot tahona v'utahona kol Yisrael kol dama v'hona v'shamaya v'imru
Amen.
Yehei shalom arum v'shamaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav Yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'himeru.
Amen. This time I want to call upon Reed Antonia to please come up to the bima to present Cassidy with her talit. Let us please rise as we join Cassidy and her family in the Shecheyanu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Let us remain standing. We continue with the service for taking out the Torah, page 168.
Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai va'ein kema'asecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai os le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Av harahamim heitiva v'tzon ha'et Zion tivnei homo Yerushalayim tivnei homo Yerushalayim ki v'cha levabetaknu Melech El Ram Benisa Adon Olamim. Vayehi ben Zohar Ha'aron Vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai Veyafutsu Oivecha Veyadusu Mesanecha Mipanecha Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, levar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael. B'kdushato, Barik Shemei Morei Alma.
Page 170.
Be'ana rahitz, V'lishmei Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechan, Yehi Ra'ava Kodama, Detiv Taglibi, Be'oraita, Letachli Mishalin, Velibi, Veliba Decholama, Yisrael, Letavul Hain, Velishlam, Amen. Okay.
As the Torah proceeds through the center aisle and back, I'm just going to ask people to please refrain from touching it because of the situation that we're in with the COVID-19. So hopefully in a few months from now, we'll be able to do everything we used to do before, but for now, just let Cassidy go back and forth without touching the Torah. Thank you.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adoneinu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adoneinu, Kadosh Shemo. והנצח וההוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני הממלכה, ועמית נעשה לכל ראש. רוממו, אדוני אלוהינו משתחוו למלכות קדושו.
רוממו אדוני והשתחוו להקדשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
Let us please be seated. הברח המרחם עושים מזכור ביתנו ויציל נפשותינו מן השעות הרעות, ויגר ויצר הרע מן הנשואים ויכון אותנו לפליטת עולמים, בימה למשאלותינו, במידה טובה, ישועה ורחמים. Our first Aliyah is on Zoom this morning. What? Oh, that's right. Before we begin with the Aliyot, let us, such not a usual situation, Cassidy, that some of the things that we did for many, many years have actually not become the obvious. So we're going to actually listen to Dvar Torah that Cassidy heard, and if DJ actually makes sure that nothing falls. She's worked very, very hard, DJ, so make sure that we don't have another one of these things happen. Thank you, Cassidy. So please share with us your words of Torah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
My Torah portion is about God's command to Moses to go speak to Pharaoh so that the Israelites could be free from slavery in Egypt. By the time we begin this Torah portion, there had been several plagues already. However, God...
So I'm actually going to do something you understand very well. Slow down. Okay? Slow down, please.
By the time we begin this Torah portion, there had already been several plagues. However, God hardens Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh doesn't immediately agree to let the Israelites go. Moses and Aaron plead with Pharaoh to let the Israelites go free. Because he refuses, the Egyptians are punished with plagues of locusts, darkness, and finally the death of their firstborn. God tells Moses that after the last plague, Pharaoh will let the Israelites leave. That midnight, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt and proclaimed that each year, on the evening of the 14th day of the first month, a festival lasting 7 days will be celebrated to recall their liberation from Egypt. This is, of course, becomes the holy day of Passover. One of the most interesting and often overlooked parts of the Torah portion is that on their way to Egypt, the Israelites took gold from the Egyptians. God demanded Moses to tell the Israelites to borrow each man from his neighbor and each woman from hers, objects of silver and gold. The Egyptians willingly gave the Israelites what they requested. The real question here is, why did they give the gold to us willingly? I think there are two options. They probably did it because they felt bad because of the way they had treated us for hundreds of years. On the other hand, Egypt was completely devastated by the plague, so they probably just wanted us to leave quickly so that the devastation would end. Another explanation about why we took the gold from the Egyptians comes from the Midrash. The rabbis teach us that the Egyptians worshipped their wealth and their possessions. In fact, they had so much gold that it was so bright that it blinded them to do anything else that was not shining, and thus they couldn't see anything but the gold. That created a very different type of darkness, which may be what the Torah is referring to here. So God tells us to take their gold as a way of punishing them for worshiping their wealth and not seeing the suffering of other human beings around them. If we look at it in our modern eyes, the gold could be considered reparations for slavery. Gold and silver were not just a neighborly gift, but rather spoils justified by the Jewish victory over the Egyptians. For many years, the Egyptians had treated the Israelites cruelly, Taking the gold and silver from the Egyptians was a mean of restoring the Jewish pride. It proves that Jews are equal in every way to their tyrants. I believe that much can be learned from the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. It can make God seem cruel, but if we look at who God was actually targeting, we will quickly learn that he did it to a really bad person, a tyrant who thought he was better than everyone else. The ultimate lesson of this story is that it doesn't matter who we are and how good we think we are, or how talented or powerful. Everyone is humbled at some point. Sometimes being humbled in the way in which Pharaoh was really punishes others, and not only that person. That is why we must never let situations get out of our control because we are arrogant or indifferent to other people's lives. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So now we're going to proceed with our first Aliyah, which we have on Zoom.
Our reading this morning, the portion of Bo, begins on page 379, the third line on the page, verse number 4.
ויעזור ויגן ולהושיט כל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל אלוהינו נו כבוד לתורה. יעמדו נחום לבן דוד הכהן ואסתר בלה בת זיסור ראשון. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. ודקם הדבקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם כיום. Go ahead.
Baruch Hanamrach L'Olam Va'ed.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Moshe ko amar Adonai kachatzot halayla ani yotzei b'toch Mitzrayim u'meit kol bechor b'eretz Mitzrayim mibchor paro hayoshev al kiso ad bechor hashivcha asher achar harei chayim v'chol bechor behema v'hayta tzaka gedola b'chol eretz Mitzrayim asher chamohu lo niyata v'chamohu lo tozif u'lechol b'nei Yisrael lo yecheratz kelev l'shono l'mei ish v'yad behema Leman teidun asher yaflet onai b'Mitzrayim uvein Yisrael v'yardu chol avadecha ele elai v'ishtachavu li lemor tzei ata v'chol ha'am asher baraglecha v'yacharei chen eitzei v'yitzei me'im paro b'choriaf v'yomer Adonai el Moshe lo yishma aleichem paro Leman Revot Moftahai Be'eretz Mitzrayim U'Moshe v'Yaharon Asu et kol Moftim ha'ele lifnei Paro V'yachazek Adonai elev Paro V'lo shilach et b'nei Yisrael me'artzo.
Amen. Our second Aliyah begins on page 380, chapter 12, and also via Zoom. Yamdu Yosef ben Zvi Hirsch Halevi v'Nita baz Eliezer Halevi Sheni. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe v'el Aharon b'Eretz Mitzrayim lemor hachodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana dabru kol adat Yisrael lemor be'asor lachodesh hazeh likhu lahem ish selavet avot selabayit v'im yimat habayit miyot miseh v'lakachu shcheino hakarov beito b'michsat nefashot ish lefiach lo tachosu al haseh setamim zachar ben shana yelachem min hakvasim min ha'izim tikachu v'haya lachem lemishmeret ad arba'asar yom lachodesh hazeh v'shachatu oto kol kahal adat Yisrael bein ha'arba'im v'laklu min hadam v'natnu al shtei hamezuzot v'al hamashkof al habatim asher yochlu oto bahem v'yachlu et habasar b'layla hazeh sli eshu matzot amrorim yochluhu al tochlu mimenu now v'ashel mevushal b'mayim ki im sli esh rosho kra'av v'al kirbo v'lo totiri menu ad boker v'hanotar mimenu ad boker ba'esh tisrofu.
Amen. Our third Aliyah continues on page 382, second from last bottom line, verse 11, also via Zoom. Yamdu Zvihir Sheliyahu ben Yosef Halevi v'Sera bat Abraham v'Eliora Liba bat Zvi Halevi Shlishi. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Vahed.
Amen. V'chacha tochlu oto matnechem chagurim na'alechem beraglechem akelchem biedchem v'achaltem oto b'chipazon pesachu l'Adonai v'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh v'hiketi kol b'chor be'eretz Mitzrayim me'adam v'ad behema Uvechol Elohei Mitzrayim Eseh Shefatim Ani Adonai V'haya Hadam Lachem Le'ot Al Habatim Asher Atem Sham V'ra'iti Et Hadam Ufasachti Aleihem V'lo Yevachem Negef L'mashchit V'hakoti B'eretz Mitzrayim.
Amen. Our fourth Aliyah brings us back to the sanctuary. Yamhod Reuben Ephraim ben Yosef Halevi Rivi'i. Page 383, verse 14.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Morach L'olam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Elam Vahed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'haya hayom hazeh lachem lezikaron v'chagotem oto chag Adonai l'dorotechem chukat olam tchaguhu shivat yamim matzot tochelu ach bayom harishon tashbitu seor mibatechem ki kol ochel chametz v'nechrita hanefesh ahi mi Yisrael miyom harishon ad yom hashvi'i Uvayom harishon mikra kodesh, uvayom hashavi'i mikra kodesh yeh lachem, kol melacha lo yaseh bahem, ach asher yechel lechol nefesh, hu levado yaseh lachem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet b'chayei olam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Fifth Aliyah takes us back to Zoom and can be found on top of page 385, verse 17. Tamosh lamas gitel bat Moshe Hamishi. Make sure you unmute yourself so we can hear you. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Amen. Ushmartem et hamatzot ki be'etzem hayom hazeh hotzeti et tzivotechem me'eretz Mitzrayim ushmartem et hayom hazeh lidorotechem chukat olam barishon barba'asar yom lachodesh ba'erev tochlu matzot ad yom ha'echad v'yesrim lachodesh ba'arev shivat yamim orlo yimatzeh bevatechem Ki kol ochel machmetzet v'nechreta hanefesh ahi me'adat Yisrael bager uve'ezrach ha'aretz kol machmetzet lo tochelu b'chol moshvotechem tochlu matzot.
Amen. Our sixth Aliyah brings us back to the sanctuary. Ta'amol Chana Bat Chaim V'Ruch Shishi.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayikra Moshe lechol ziknei Yisrael vayomer aleihem mishchu uku lachem tzon mishpechotechem eshachatu apasach ukachtem agudad ezov utvaltem badam asher basaf v'higatem al hamashkof v'el shtei hamezuzot min hadam asher basaf v'atem lo teitzu ish mi petach beito ad boker v'avar Adonai lingof et Mitzrayim v'ra'ad hadam al hamashkof v'al shtei hamezuzot Ufasach Adonai al hapetach v'lo yitein hamashkit lavo batechem lingof ushmartem et hadavar hazel chaglecha ulevanecha ad olam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamonatan Ben Chaim Shvi'i.
Our seventh reading begins in the middle of 386, verse 25.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'haya ki tavo'u el haaretz asher yitain Adonai lachem kasher diber, ushmartem et ha'avodah hazot. V'haya ki omru aleichem b'neichem ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. V'amartem zebach pesach hu Adonai, asher pasach al batei b'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim, b'nakot Mitzrayim, v'yet batenu hitzil. Vayikod am vayishtachavu, vayelchu, vayasu b'nei Yisrael kasher, tziv Adonai et Moshe v'Aharon kenasu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam natal betohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We now rise for the chanting of the half Kaddish, and as we do so, we'll pass out the candy for later on. Yit gadal v'yit gadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, ubisman kariv, v'yemeru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach, le'alam le'al me'amaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitbar v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei de kudashah, brichu. Li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata.
Tush bechata v'nechemata, damiram be'olma, v'emeru. Amen.
May be seated. Know how tempting it is to open up the candy right now, but just hold on to it for just a few minutes longer. At this time,
Trust me, it's the worst candy in the world, so eating it won't help you.
At this time in our service, we're going to be doing a special Misha Barak for healing for those in our community that need healing. During this blessing, I'm going to take a pause, and I invite you to think of those in your life that need a prayer for healing, both physically, mentally, in our community. Misha Barak avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'Imatenu Serif Karach v'Leah hu yivarek Rebbe'el Kacholim.
Yosef Moshe ben Zlatar, Ibn Feigul Chaya Vadora Chaim Chanuch ben Deborah Avram ben Evelyn, Sarah bat Sarah Imeinu, Yaronas Madar bat Isabella.
Kadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem Rezurakam Refuatam Lishlach Lachem Mehera Refuah Shlim Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Betzok Shacholim Vezet Edidei Oskim Betzor Kechem Shabbat Him Nizrok Rofrok Rovo Lavo Hashtab Bizman Kari Venomar Amen. Tamod, Tamod, Tamod Habakur Haba Mitzvah Hanalei Abaru Ben Ephraim Halevi Maftir Chazak.
Our concluding reading of portion of Bo can be found in the middle of page 393, verse 14.
Baruch Hanamurach L'Olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarak Le'olam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torto. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'haya ki shachavin machar le'mor mazot, v'amarta elav v'hozek yad. Hotianu Adonai mimitzrayim mibeit avadim, v'yehi ki hiksha par'o v'shalchenu v'yaharok Adonai kol bechor בארץ מצרים, מבכור אדם ועל בכור בהמה, על כן אני זובח לאדוני. כל פטר רחם הזכרים, וכל בכור בני אפדה. והיה לאות על ידך, ולטוטפות בין עיניך, כי בחוזק יד הוציאנו אדוני ממצרים. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Let us please rise.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ואמתנו רבקה רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את חנה לאה בת ראובן אפרים הלוי, שהגיעה למצוות ולתה היום לכבוד המקום ולכבוד התורה ולכבוד השבת. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמרך וחייך, וכונן את ליבה להיות שלם עם אדוני אלוהיך, להגות בתורתו, ללכת בדרכיו, ולשמור מצוותיו, לחיות מצווה למצוא את יהודה, ולחיות אישה אוהבת, ואהובה אדונך היום ובכל יום, לכן ולחסד רחמים בעיניך ובעיני כל רואיך, ושלח ברך וצלחה מכל מעשה ידיך, יהי רצון שיזכו הוריך לגודלו, לתורה, לחופה ומעשים טובים, ונאמר
Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Cassidy, who has been called to the Torah upon reaching the age of mitzvot, with reverence for God, the Torah, and the Shabbat. May the Holy One protect and sustain Cassidy, helping her to be wholehearted in her faith, to study Torah, to fulfill the mitzvot, and to always walk in God's ways. May Cassidy have the strength to find her calling, to be a person who is both loving and beloved. And may she find love and compassion today and every day in your eyes and in the eyes of all who see her, O God. May her parents rear her to maturity, guiding her to a love of Torah, to the blessing of chuppah, and to a life of good deeds. And let us say, Amen. Simen tov, mazel tov,
Mazel tov, singmen tov, singmen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, singmen tov, singmen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, singmen tov. Yelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael. Yelanu, yelanu, ulechol Yisrael. David melech Yisrael. Chai, chai, v'kayam, David melech Yisrael. Chai, chai, v'kayam, Mazel tov. We invite all the children that are pre-B'nai Mitzvot to come up here and pick up all of this wonderful candy. Yamdu Hagbaba Hagolel.
We remain standing for the raising and the binding of our Torah scroll.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לבני בני ישראל על פי אדוני לים משה. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב שר רבקה רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את כל הקרואים של אותו יום ואת כל המתפללים אותם בכל משפטיהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלח ברכה והצלחה וכל מעשה ידיהם עם כל ישראל אחיהם, ונאמר אמן. Let us please be seated. The Haftarah for Parashat Bo can be found on page 395 at the bottom of that page, 395 of our Chumashim. Beautiful Haftarah from the prophet Jeremiah.
haolam asher bachar bim tovim beratza v'divrehem hane'emarim be'emet baruch atah Adonai haboher b'torah u'Moshe abdo u'Yisrael amo u'bimvei ha'emet b'tzedek Hadavar asher diber Adonai el Yirmiyahu hanavi lavo Nebuchadrezzar melech Bavel lehakot eretz Mitzrayim hagidu v'Mitzrayim bahashmiu v'migdol bahashmiu v'nov uvtakpan heis imru ityatzei v'chachei lach Kiachla Erev Sivivecha Madua Mischach Abirecha Lo Amad Ki Adonai Hadafo Irba Koshel Gam Nafal Isho Re'ehu Vayomru Kuma Ben Ashuva El Ameinu Bel Eretz Melatenu Mipnei Kerev Hayona Karu Sham Paro, Melech Mitzrayim, Sha'on, Ha'evir, Hamo'ed, Ha'ani, Nu HaMelech, Adonai Tziva'ot Shemo, Ki Ketavor, Beharim, Carmel, Bayam Yavo, Klei Gola Asilach, Yoshevet, Bat Mitzrayim, Ki Nof, Lishama, Tiyeh, B'nitzta, Me'en Yoshev, Egla, Yfeifia, Mitzrayim, Keret, Mitzafon, Bava, Gam Tehirecha, V'kirba, Kegle, Marbek, Gigam Hema, Hivnu, Nasu, Yaktav, Lo Amadu, Giyam Edom, Ba, Elahem, Ebekuratam, Kola, Kanacha, Shelik, Kivahayil, Yelehu, of Kardimot, Ba'ula, Kehove 18, Kartu, Yara, Numadonai, Kilo Yehaker, Ki, Rabu, Merbe, Va'en Lahem, Mispar, Hovisha, Bat Mitzrayim, Nitna, Bayadam Safon, Amar, Adonai Tziva'ot, Elohi Israel, Inani, Voked, Elamon, Rino, Ba'al Paro, Ba'al Mitzrayim, Ba'al Elohecha, Ba'al Melechecha, Ba'al Paro, Ba'al Havohim, Bo, Untatim, B'yad, Nevakshe, Nafsham, Uvyad, Uvyad Melech Bavel, Uvyad Avadav, V'arehein, Tishkon, Kimekedem, Numadonai, Bata, Altira, Abdi, Yaakov, Va'altecha, Yisrael, Ki, Hinani, Moshiacha, Mereho, Va'atzarcha, Me'eret Shivyam, Veshav, Yaakov, Veshaka, Vesha'anan, Ve'emacharid, Ata, Altira, Abdi, Yaakov, Numadonai, Ki, Itha, Ani, Ki esekhala bechol hagoyim asher hidaktika shema leotha lo esekhala bisarticha lamishpat benakela anakecha Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim Tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh hamdaber kayem shehol devarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ne'emanim devarecha v'davar ehad mivarecha achor lo yashiv rekam Ki el melech ne'eman, berachamon ata, baruch ata Adonai, ha'el ha'ne'eman, bechol devarav.
Amen.
Rachem al Tzion, ki hi beit hayenu, v'la aluvat nefesh toshiyah, bimheira v'yamenu, baruch ata Adonai,
L'shamo.
v'sameach Tzion b'vanecha.
Amen.
Samheinu Adonai Eloheinu Ba'eliyahu Hanavi Abdecha Uvmahu Beit David Meshihecha Bimheira Yavo V'Yagil Libenu Al Kisolo Yeshav Zar V'lo Yinhalu Od Al Kerim Et Kivodo Ki V'Shem Kod Shecha Nishbatalo Shelo Yikbenero Le'olam Ba'ed Baruch Ata Adonai
Shmo.
Magen David
Amen.
Al HaTorah, Ba'al HaVodah, Ba'al HaNvi'im, Ba'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh, Shenatata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Likdusha V'Linucha, Lechavod U'Tifaret. Al HaKol, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu Modim Lach, Umbarchim Otach, Yiparach Shim Habifi Kohai, Damid Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Ata
Shmo.
Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Please. Slow. Slow. Okay, take a breath. Okay, there you go.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm very excited to become a bat mitzvah today. To be completely honest, I really didn't want to do this at the beginning. Now I feel great about it because it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Hebrew wasn't that hard. It actually feels great to be able to read the Hebrew side of the Siddur. I also feel much more comfortable in the synagogue than I used to before. I grew up here. I went to TBS preschool and religious school. I feel like a great part of my life was spent within these walls. The real question is, what happens now? Becoming a bat mitzvah marks my transition into adulthood. By becoming a bat mitzvah, I am setting an example for my sisters. The rabbi told me that this is not my graduation from Judaism. This is only the beginning of my journey, and I will do my best to make sure I really stick to it and grow up to be a responsible member of the Jewish community. Becoming a bat mitzvah means I get to learn more about being Jewish. I have learned that being Jewish is not something that just happens to you. It is something that you should be proud of. I also learned being Jewish and coming to temple is like soccer practice. You really don't want to go, but once you are there, you love it, and it makes you feel great. My bubby Ada, who is 2 weeks away from her 105th birthday and lives in New York, has been an inspiration throughout my life and my Jewish journey. She is living through her second pandemic and is more vibrant and with it than ever before. Her joy for life is definitely connected to her Judaism and the way in which she sees the world. I really wish to be able to have the strength she has when I grow up, and to love life and my tradition in the very same way. For my mitzvah project, I help kids get gifts for the holidays. For the past 2 years, my family has helped the Freedom of the Press Church downtown Thanksgiving and the holidays. This church is not supported by any nonprofits, nor do they receive any money from huge donors. They are in the middle of one of the most difficult areas in our city. They rely on families like mine to help them during the holidays. These are families with very little, kids who mostly live with their grandparents and maybe a single parent. It has opened my eyes to how fortunate I am to have a home, to have basic necessities, food, water, and simple things that I take advantage of every day, like asking for takeout. My Bat Mitzvah project is helping my mom's friend organize all the toys needed for the families, wrapping gifts, and delivering them to the church on Christmas Eve. It also has taught me how important it is to help others regardless of their faith or background. Thank you all for being here with me on this special day, especially with those here on Zoom. That is not how I expected it to be, but it's the best we can do right now. I know I could not have done it without the help of a number of people. I'd like to thank Adam and DJ for keeping up with me when I miss a lesson. I also want to thank Rabbi Hodson and Rabbi Goodman for all your help for making this possible. Next, of course, I want to thank my parents for supporting me. Thank you guys for keeping up with me when I have my fits, when I don't want to watch a movie with the family, for always being there for me when I need it the most, even though I'm not the favorite. I'd also like to thank my friends and Grace. She wanted a special shout out. Once again, thank you all for attending via Zoom and in person. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. At this time, I'd like to ask Tony and Bree to please come up to the bima to share some words with Cassidy.
I just want to let everyone know I have 3 favorites. Cassidy, as every parent stands on the day of their child's bar or bat mitzvah and says, I'm so proud of you. Those words could not hold more true as I say now. I'm so proud of you. As I have read your Torah portion, it is interesting that it falls during this time as it talks about the last 3 plagues. And here we are in the midst of what seems like a plague, as Becker calls it, the corona. Just as though many Israelites were lost during the time of Pharaoh, many have lost loved ones due to COVID. Eventually, the Jews were freed and allowed to leave, and hopefully soon we will be freed of this pandemic. Moses and the Jews always steered the course and never gave out hope. I see the same qualities in you. You have worked so hard this past year to bring you to this day, and it has been far from a normal year. Unfortunately, this is not what we planned, but you seem to have made the best of everything, even though you say little words. As you're aware, before your dad and I got married, we had the discussion of religion and what our kids should be raised. I did not know much about Judaism, but I knew that I wanted my kids to have a foundation of something. So we agreed we would raise our kids Jewish, even though I was not, and also raise something completely different. I made a promise to your dad, to you and your sisters, and to God, with the ongoing joke of the family being that I'm responsible for your Jewish education. And that education started here when we moved to Las Vegas almost 13 years ago, and we found this beautiful community, meeting some amazing families here, and lucky enough to still be friends with the same families as well as make other friends along the way. I remember you running down these halls in preschool so small, it really does seem like yesterday. But here we are, and you have become a beautiful young woman, and as Kennedy says, you've had a glow up. I had to look that up, by the way. Urban Dictionary defines it as an incredible transformation. And while I believe that she meant, in their definition, means transformation of appearances, you have had and will continue to have different glow-ups in your life, as you should, because you need to discover who you are as a person and also discover who you are as a Jewish woman. I look at you and see someone who has the greatest confidence in the world. It's something that I admire and respect, and something you should always hold dear to your heart. You're headstrong. Sometimes this is not in my favor, but it is something to be proud of. You're funny and silly and make others laugh around you. You seem to never let anything bother you, even though I know something does. You work hard for what you want and what you need to achieve. You know that you are Jewish and take pride in that. You are the first of 2 more bat mitzvahs. As my first child and oldest child, you have taught me so many things, and some things I have done well, and some things I try to do better. You are a great role model for your sisters, as all of you could stand to be nicer to each other, but I know if push came to shove, you would always stand up for them. As I always say, the 3 of you are my Oreo. Without all 3 pieces, it just doesn't work. You have to all stick together. What I have learned as far as the Jewish community sticking together is that everyone has their own meaning within Judaism and or being Jewish, and it does not matter what it is, but should be relevant to you. I know that you will always stay true to yourself and carry being Jewish with you.
Before I get into it, I see so many of our old friends and family, and just how many people have showed up on Zoom from the East Coast and other parts of the country, and that's really awesome. Thank you guys. And I think the best part, my favorite part about our New York people is so many of you dressed up and put on ties to sit in your living room. So that's really great. All right, Cass, as I thought about what I would say to you today, one word overwhelmingly just kind of kept coming into my head. And Cass, that word is leadership. You are a natural born leader, but you do it in a way that it's just so totally Cass. You do it, you lead, but you lead quietly with few words. You lead with integrity, you lead by example, and you lead with work ethic. And you know what? Your peers, they line up right behind you. Stay true to yourself, and this character trait is going to serve you really well. I'm going to take advantage of being up here with this microphone and let you in on just a little secret, Cass. I have always been just so amazed at how little Mom and I have regulated you your entire life. We've never told you when to go to bed. We never wake you up. I've pretty much never helped you with your homework. You're just prepared and ready for whatever the next day has in store for you ahead, whether it's a soccer game or school, even if it's DJ at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, you're just ready and good to go. I think Mom and I, our biggest role for you is to kind of serve as an Uber service, and you pretty much have it handled. You've always had it handled. And in a nutshell, almost from the day you were born, you were kind of mature beyond your years. Let me pivot to soccer. So, Cass, your soccer career, it's been one of the true highlights of my life. From coaching you when you were little, when we built the Little Gators dynasty at the Rainbow Youth Soccer League, and I think I see Coach Rob out there. And Coach, are you wearing your Little Gators championship ring today? Nice, yeah, all right. And then fast forward to today, to your ongoing journey as a club soccer player, currently with the Heat ECNL team. The seriousness with which you go about your soccer business is awesome. You're dedicated. Mom and I, we can't even get you to miss a game during your bat mitzvah weekend. Granted, it's the LVSA team, your former team, who I know you really, really want to beat. And Mom and I actually really respect the fact that you lobbied us and made us say yes to this. But you have to return the favor. And now that you're going to go out there, you better make your presence known. You have a strength advantage, use it. Your friends. I absolutely love the relationship you have with your friends. Your friends and your peers have so much respect for you. You're like a magnet for them. I love that you have different friends from all different walks of your life. You have your I guess we call it the Jew crew from TBS, growing up here, running around the halls when you guys were kids, to your soccer friends and your school friends and even your friends from other sports. Something that I really, really respect about you, Cass, is how you've nurtured friendships since you were a little kid. Now that at the age of 13, you already have a number of friendships that are truly long-term in nature. These friendships and the people you choose to have them with, Parker, Jewish Grace, stop talking, yeah, you guys, these choices, it's another testament to your character and who you are. Now, what I'm going to say now might actually come as a little bit of a surprise to you, Cass. But believe it or not, you actually serve as a really good role model for your sisters. And I say this despite the fact that you can be kind of mean. You're a great cousin, niece, and granddaughter. And you know what? You are the best, oldest daughter that a dad could ever ask for. Cass, I love you, and I can't wait to watch you continue to grow. Come here and hug me.
Very nice. Very good. We're now going to continue with a prayer for our country, which is on page 177. And it's going to be read by two different people this morning, Mindy Becker and Arlene and Manny Alves. Let us please rise. They are on Zoom, page 177, and let us please join with them as we recite together a prayer for our country. against nation. Neither shall lay their war anymore.
For all of them, for the least of them to the greatest, shall live only. And let us say,
Amen. We continue now on page 178 with a prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Sheva Shamayim, Tzur Israel veGoalo, Barech et Medinat Israel, Reshit Smichat Geulatenu. Agen alea ve'avrat chazecha, ufros alea sukat shlomecha. Ushlach orcha ve'amidcha leroshea, sarea ve'yoatzea. Betaknem beitza tova milefanecha. Chazek et yedei mignei eretz kodshenu, be'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, va'ateret nitzachon teatrem. Benatata shalom ba'aretz, besimchat olam leyoshveya, benomar, amen. And now we're going to continue with a prayer for peace on page 178. At the bottom of the page, we're going to pray responsibly with Cassidy's Bobby, Ada Becker, who, by the way, I've heard is celebrating her 105th birthday next week. So we want to wish her Mazel Tov. I'm actually impressed that she's on Zoom. So let us join Cassidy's Bobby in a prayer for peace, page 178.
It's okay, take your time.
It's okay.
Listen.
101, somebody said 105. This is what okay. Look, 101 is like 120 to me. It's 105, right? Okay. See, I'm right. And Bobeda looks better than me and Reed put together, so. The nation will not threaten nation, and the human family will not again know war. Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion.
I'll rid the band of vicious
beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Amen.
Amen. Yasher kochech. To 120.
Amen.
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 We're going to continue now with Ashrei, which is on page 181. Let us please be seated.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Od Yehalelu Hasela.
Ashrei Ham Shekachalo, Ashrei Ham Shadonai Elohav.
Tehillah LeDavid, Arim HaElohai HaMelech, Ba'avar Chashim HaLeolam Ba'ed.
Bechol Yom Avarchecha, Lo Shimcha Leolam Va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Hu Me'olam Me'od, V'ligdu Lato Ein Heker.
Door the door Shabak Ma'asecha, Ugrotecha Yagidu.
Hadar Kevod Hodecha, V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha.
Ve'zuz Nortecha Yomeru, Udulatecha Asabrena.
Zecher Rav Tuha Yabiu, V'tikataha Yiranenu.
Chanun V'rachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Udo Hased.
Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rahamav Kol Mahasav.
Yodu Chanai Kol Ma'asecha, V'chasidecha Yevarchucha.
Kevod Malhutecha Yomeru, Uviratecha Yedaberu.
Lehodia Livnei Hadam Gevurotav, Uvod Hadar Malchuto.
Malhuteha Malhut Kol Olamim, Umimshalteha Behol Dor Vador.
So make Adonai Lekol Hanoflim, V'zokef Lekol Hakfufim.
Ene Kol Elacha Yisaberu, Va'ata Notein Lahem Et Oklam Bito.
פותח את ידיך ומשביע לכל הרצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, והשיא בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראו באמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה, את שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל השעים ישמיר.
תהילה אדוני ידבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם בעת.
ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. Let us please rise as we prepare to return the Torah to the ark. Again, Cassidy and her parents are going to be walking up and down the aisle. Again, we ask that you do not touch directly the Torah.
יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו. תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל המקרובו. הללויה, הללויה, מזמור לדוד. אבו לאדוני בנעלים, אבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, אבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים אדוני על מים רבים. כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בהדר. כל אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את ארזי הבנון. וירקידם כמו עגל, לבנון וציון כמו בן רמים. כל אדוני חוצת להבות אש, כל אדוני יחיל מדבר, יחיל אדוני מדבר קדש. כל אדוני יכול לאיילות, ויחשוף יערות. ובכלו כולו אומר כבוד, אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם.
אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן,
אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום, ובנותו
יאמר שוב על אבות כנפי ישראל.
כי לכם נתתי לכם תורתי, אל תעזובו.
עץ חיימי, למה חזיקים בה? אדוני ונשובה Shabbat Shalom. Let us please be seated. One of the little known things about the Jewish calendar is that we have 4 New Years. And actually, according to the Torah portion that we read today, the first month of the year is the month of Nisan, when we celebrate Passover, not the month of Tishrei, when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah. So fittingly enough, this Torah portion says, "Achodesh hazeh lachem, Rosh Chodashim lechodshei Hashanah." This month will be for you the first of the months of the year. When I was reading these words this week, I actually became tremendously sentimental. It was very emotional for me because it was exactly a year ago that we learned about the first cases of coronavirus in our country. And it was exactly a year ago when the city of Wuhan went into lockdown. So for us, this is really like the beginning of a year. It's been an exact year. And so once again, I find in the words of the Torah that eternal truth and that incredible window through which we as Jews see reality beyond reality itself. Sometimes in life, it takes an event so radical, so difficult to overcome, to make you understand that life will probably never be the same way it was again before that happened. And I remember at the beginning of this whole thing, people told me, Rabbi, my daughter's bat mitzvah is in November. What are we going to do? And I said, oh, don't worry, by November, this should be completely gone. You remember that, Jill? I was so certain, right? Me, the scientist, of course. How wrong we were. And one of the reasons why we were wrong is because we're used to be able to control everything in our lives. There's almost nothing we cannot control as human beings these days. But this Shabbat, we're reminded by the Torah, and again, of course, by our own reality, that that's not the case. Look, what does God do? God could have freed the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, from the beginning. He could have spared the Egyptians all the suffering. He could have just brought them out. But instead, God sends these 10 devastating plagues. You know why? The Egyptians, according to our sages, needed to understand and feel the power of God, and so did the Israelites. Because at that point in time, the Egyptians believed they could control everything. And if you look at these plagues that we read about in the Torah, you understand that each one of these plagues was strategically designed, like surgically pinpointed, at one of the things or many of the things that the Egyptians held holy or as staples of their lives. For example, turning the Nile into blood, that was their life stream. The frogs, they worshiped them for fertility. Their crops, they forgot of the famine. They took them for granted. And of course, each one of these plagues has its own logic. Now, throughout time, we've heard people trying to understand if this really happened or not. Are they scientifically based? And you know, I've come to this conclusion that it's irrelevant. Where they physically happen the way the Torah says they did, the metaphor is so much more important than the actual possibility of the Nile really turning into blood. The way in which you try to understand what took place and the way in which you try to understand the power of God is so much more important than whether this could have happened in reality or not. And the one thing I want you to remember as you leave this morning is the way Egypt probably looked at the end of these 10 plagues. You see, we've gone tremendously gung-ho about the plagues in our modern lives. When we have the Pesach Seder, we actually bring out these little frogs made out of plastic, and we wear masks symbolizing the plagues, and we put like red ink and water. I mean, we do all of these crazy things. We turn the plagues into a child's play. Think of what Egypt looked like at the end of these 10 plagues. It was not a story for children. Death, devastation, famine, cadavers of animals and people and frogs rotting in the streets. It was almost like a nuclear explosion. It is almost like a biblical Hiroshima. You know, I'm reminded of a story, actually, talking with Tanya yesterday. Some years ago, when John Ensign was our U.S. Senator for Nevada, he's now the veterinarian at Boca Park, and, by chance and destiny, the boss of my son Joshua, he came to our home for Passover. So now we're having a U.S. Senator in our house for Pesach. I gave this lecture to the children. They have to behave themselves. They cannot fight. Senator Ensign is a powerful man in Washington. We want him to help Israel. We have to give our best possible image. Ha! So the plagues make it out. And we had this magic trick of water and blood. And Joshua wanted the plagues, and Daniela wanted the plagues. And suddenly this imaginary blood with ink turned into real blood from Daniela's nose. Joshua punched her for the frogs. And she got a nosebleed. Ari was too little to get into the fight, thank God. But if she would have been there would have been broken bones. This is what we've done with the plagues. But honestly, they're really a catastrophic event in our history. Imagine if you would have been alive during those days and you would have seen your Egyptian neighbors as much as you despised them, dropping in the streets. And of all the plagues, the more that I try to study them, of all the plagues, the most inexplainable one of them all is darkness. And I'm not alone. Rashi, our commentator, singles out the plague of darkness. And he says, why darkness? After all of these things, why darkness? After all, you want them to see what was happening. You wanted the Egyptians to be able to see the devastation. And the Torah uses a word, right? The Hebrew word for darkness is choshech. But the Torah says vayamesh choshech. And it's the only time in the whole entire Hebrew Bible that the word vayamesh appears. It's the darkness that is so intense you literally can cut it with a knife. So what type of darkness was it? Some of our sages believe that it was a darkness that was also around when the sun shined, meaning even during daylight they couldn't see. So it perhaps was not a physical darkness, but a spiritual darkness. A darkness that prevented them not only from seeing with their eyes, but feeling with their hearts. You know, I think that we in America have experienced a year filled with darkness such as this. When I thought of the past year and I thought of what it was like, the word Vayamesh Choshech came to mind. Last week I was standing at a funeral at the cemetery. And if you've ever been to the cemetery here in Las Vegas, you don't have to be many times there. They have these little tents that they place at every service so people can sit and have some shade. And there's usually one, the service that you are at. There were 5 or 6 at the same cemetery, just waiting for people to be buried. I've never seen anything like this in my life. It usually takes something like this for us to understand that we have been blinded by the darkness, and that we may be able to see with our eyes, but our heart at some point stops feeling and stops seeing, because we become so used to what's going on around us that we can't really understand it. It took for me that image at the cemetery and the death of a childhood friend of mine in Mexico City to fully come to terms with the darkness of COVID-19. Because until it doesn't affect you personally, yes, we can't go to the movies, we don't go to restaurants, but when you have somebody die next to you, somebody you care for, that's when it hits you. When you find yourself downtown and you see a line of hundreds and hundreds of cars with people in them trying to get food for their families, that's when the darkness hits you, and when you say, how could I not have seen this? We have had the plague of darkness. There's another midrash that Cassidy actually mentioned, where our sages tell us that the Egyptians were blinded by the brightness of their possessions. That it was not darkness, but brightness. That all the gold they had and everything that they worshipped as sacred, which was material, blinded them. And I want to ask ourselves the question, are we not a little bit like that? Let me tell you a story. If you don't think our world blinds us. When this whole pandemic started, we had a really difficult situation at the temple. We did not know if we were going to be able to survive. Our early childhood center experienced tremendous financial losses because we couldn't have as many children. And also, we stopped classes and we saw families that were struggling to make ends meet. And we had to make the decision, do we give their money back or not? And we decided we would give the money back to those families that needed it. We were going to continue to teach the children online, like all schools did. But families who clearly didn't need it, we asked for them to please hang in there with us. After everything that happened, one story sticks to my mind. One of our own, the CEO of a building company here in Las Vegas, a young person, took our temple to court for $5,000 to small claims court. And he lost. If this is not your wealth blinding you with darkness, I don't know what it is. And I mentioned that story so you can put it into words, and not only into words, but into something that you could touch and see. Some people are so blinded by their material possessions that their heart and their soul shuts down, and they can't understand the suffering of others. Last week, in the middle of all of these horrible things that happened in our country in Washington, D.C., in the aftermath of the horrific events at the Capitol, of the instigation and the pain and the death, last week we saw 400 lights being turned on at the reflection pool next to the Lincoln Monument. And I cried. How do you put 400,000 deaths into perspective? And then I heard some words that were unbelievably inspiring to me from the president. To heal, we must remember. If we go about our lives pretending that 400,000 people have not died, that they do not matter, this country cannot move forward. Remember the children of Israel. 400 years in slavery. And God didn't help them. It took 400 years. And again, the sages say they were so immersed in crying out for their own personal lives that they forgot to see the pain of their neighbors. 400 years. To heal, we must remember. Last week, through an act of kindness, our clergy here, Rabbi Hudson, DJ, myself, and our Heber Kadisha, our Holy Burial Society, we were actually given the COVID-19 vaccine. And as I sat down to have my vaccine, I literally had tears in my eyes. And I was being injected by a fireman, believe it or not. And as he was about to inject me, I said, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, atov ve'ameitiv. He looks at me, he pauses, says, are you okay? I said, I'm okay. I think I scared him. That means, blessed are you, Adonai, ruler of the universe, who are good and benevolent. And I remembered, in that split second before the needle hit my arm, I remembered the pain, the death, the children out of school, the hungry people. And for the first time in many months, I felt not only graced by God, but also that the darkness was about to end. I want to end this morning by sharing with you 3 verses of that beautiful poem that we heard on Inauguration Day by Amanda Gorman, the 22-year-old poet. And she said, when day comes, we ask ourselves where we can find light in this never-ending shade. So, while once we asked how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe, now we assert how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Of all the plagues, the only one that Rashi questions is darkness. Why did we need this plague? To make us understand that you can be blind even with your eyes open. Dear friends, take with you this morning the eternal message of our Torah. Open your eyes. Let's not live in self-selected darkness. Let's live in the brightness of a new day that comes from understanding that we need to feel the pain of others. And only when we do that can we thank God for all the blessings we've had, even in the midst of this horrible year. of absolute darkness. Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. May I please ask us to rise? We're going to continue now on page 148 with the Chatzi Kaddish for Musaf.
Yitkadal v'kadash me'raba.
Amen.
Ve'amadi v'rakirute ve'amalik malchute. V'chayechone v'chayechol Beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kari ve'imru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba mevorach. Ve'alam
Le'amaya. Yitbarak v'ishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yinaseh. V'yitadar v'yitzaleh v'yitzalal shemene kudusha.
Brechu.
Le'ela minkom b'rakata v'shirata. Tushbekata v'nekamata da'amiran me'alma ve'imru.
Amen. We continue praying the Amidah for Musaf for Shabbat, beginning on page 185.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chazdei Avot U'mevii Goel Livnei B'nechem Le'man Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Ufokir Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei metim atah Rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach umorid hagashem, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayei metim berachamim rabim, Somek noflim verofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umido melach melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanata lachayot metim Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hametim. Naritzecha v'nagdishecha Kisot siach safei kodesh Hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh Katuv al yaneviecha V'kara ze el ze ve'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai tzivaot Melo kol haaretz kevodo Kevodo malei olam mishartav sho'alim zed laze aye mikom kevodo leumatam baruch yomeru leumatam baruch yomeru baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo Mimkomo yifem berachamim v'yachonam ham yachadim shemo erev avoker bechol yom tamid pamayim be'ahava shema omrim shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu berachamav, Sheni le'nei kol chai, Nai na 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 nai na nai na 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 nai. Nai 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 Lihio lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Ubnifrei kodshecha katuv le'mor Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Sion le'dor v'ador Hallelujah, ledor vador naki golecha, ulenetzach netzakim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu limushlei olam va'ed, ki al melech gadol v'kadosh ata, baruch ata Adonai, ha'el ha'kadosh. Tikanta Shabbat. Yes. Let's say. For those of us who have completed the Amidah, you may be seated. We continue on page 203 with Kaddish Shalem. Yitgadal v'garashem me rabba be'almad divra kidutei ve'amlik malkutei b'chayach kone b'mechon v'chaydakol be'Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari ve'meru Amen yehesh me rabba mevarach
Le'alam u'le'almei almaya Yitbarach
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yimam v'yanaseh v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei l'kedusha
Brechu
Le'ela min kol brakata v'shirata Tushbekata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru
Amen.
Titkabat slot tahona v'utahona kol Yisrael Kodama v'hona v'shamaya v'imru
Amen.
Yehi shalom aravin shamaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Osei shalom b'imromav Uyasei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru
Ve'imru Amen. We continue praying Ein Eloheinu, page 204. Please be seated.
Ein Eloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemashienu, Mi Eloheinu,
Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu. No del Adoneinu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu.
Baruch Eloheinu,
Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu.
Atahu Eloheinu,
Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
Atahu Shiktiru Avoteinu.
Lefanecha eketoret asamim. At this time, I would like to call upon Nathan Avila to please come up to the bima to present Cassidy with a gift from USY.
Mazel Tov on behalf of the USY. I recently had a COVID bar mitzvah, and it's not as fun as a normal one, I guess.
You
but
were the
did
first
good.
one, right? You were the first. You were the first one. Yeah, there was no one here but the
So,
TVs.
I know it's not easy, so you did a really good job. And this is a Havdalah candle that I hope to see you use in the future to experience Shabbat with your family time and time again. And I hope to see you in USY.
Thank you, Nathan. I'd like to call upon Ronnie Levin, member for board of directors, for some presentations on behalf of our temple.
I gotta follow that. That was a pretty good speech there.
That was great. You didn't have a COVID bar mitzvah, so you're out of the, don't even think about it.
Mazel Tov, Cassidy, on becoming a bar mitzvah today. You did a wonderful job. The temple has a certificate for you to acknowledge this special day of yours. We also, the men's club of Temple Beshalom has presented to you some candlesticks to light every Shabbat and bring in the new week. Also from the Women's League, they are presenting you with a chumash to continue your studies of Judaism. Mazel Tov, you did great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. It's okay, I wanted to, Cassidy, I'm actually very excited this morning because every week I get to, well, almost, I get to talk to B'nai Mitzvah children all the time, young adults, and I never get to talk about soccer. But with you, I will talk about soccer and soccer only. How's that? Look, there's always a friend of mine once gave me for my 40th birthday a book entitled The World Through Soccer. Actually, Joel gave me that book. And that book actually changed my life because I thought soccer was just a game and I loved soccer as a kid. But soccer is much more than that. It is the only sport, really, where countries that literally have nothing can face up to countries that are the leading countries in the world in every other area. So countries like Brazil, for example, can be champions of the world, when in reality, their society is not doing that great, their country is not doing that great. Like take Mexico, right? We never won anything. And we will continue not to win as long as the soccer team continues to be so bad. But there's a hope, right? There's a hope. That's one of the areas where we can actually succeed in something. Now, in all seriousness, ever since you were little, I have admired the type of sports figure that you are. You probably don't remember this, but once we had a soccer game outside in the field with a religious school. And everybody wanted you on their team, and I didn't understand why. It was like Shaquille O'Neal was here to play basketball, but it was you. Whoa, you're really good. So I want to share with you a story this morning. That is a story about triumph, and a story about tears, and also a story about a soccer team in Israel. The name of the team is Maccabi Tel Aviv. Now, Maccabi Tel Aviv today is perhaps one of the greatest known names in sports, not only in Israel, but also in Europe. Believe it or not, they've gotten to the European Champions Cup 3 times in their history. Not to the final, but to the group stage. They're actually pretty good. And they were founded in 1901, okay? Way before the state of Israel existed. Now, as the story goes, in 1941, that's in the middle of the Second World War, they went on a tour of Australia and New Zealand. That's really unusual because imagine getting to Australia from Israel in the middle of the war in 1941. And they're all Jewish. So it's not easy. And I want you to understand the story because that's how we know them today and we know who they are. Their uniform used to be white and blue, which would eventually become the color of the state of Israel. But for the tour that they took in Australia, they changed their uniform to a yellowish color because they knew what was happening in Europe. And they decided to dress themselves in yellow because of the stars that Jews in Europe were being made to wear by the Nazis. Since that day, their uniform remained yellow. It never went back to white and blue. They eventually brought back the blue, and now it's blue and yellow. But also, they have a basketball team, and it's the same thing. And that's how it started. By the way, it seems to be just the story of a sports team, but imagine to go play a game in a foreign country and to try to send the message that your brothers and sisters were being killed and marginalized and tortured in Europe when nobody wanted to hear it and nobody cared. And that's why they changed their uniform. So I brought you something this morning. I brought you a jersey from Maccabi Tel Aviv. And I know this is something you will wear. I know it for a fact. I hope it's not too big, right? You know, in Israel, they never have my size. This is the biggest size. But it's for you. It's brand new, never worn, right? And it actually, look at what it says in the back. It says Bet Shalom and the number 18 for high, for life. I hope that you get to wear it and you think of that message, that even when we play sports, we get to stand up for who we are as Jews. We really do. And that you always do it proudly and do it strongly and continue to be as good as you are in everything that you do, Cassidy. May this be the beginning of a journey, into a Jewish journey that never ends, and that brings you new discovery and new experiences of spirituality and things that uplift you every day of your life. And remember this story. It's a beautiful story. May you have the strength to stand up for yourself and for your people, wherever you go and wherever life takes you. Even if it's a soccer player. Who knew, right? Mazel tov to you and to your family, Cassidy. So now, this is yours. Wear it with a lot of pride. By the way, the word Maccabi, which usually is translated into hammer, right? Its origin is Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. It's who is like you upon all the gods. And that's why they chose that name too, because they thought of themselves as representing the God of the state of Israel. So think about that together with the Torah portion that you read today. It's an incredible, incredible lesson. Let us please rise. Turn around. Still. This is why you have to come on Saturdays. We're not going to go like this. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יראה אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך ויעשה לך שלום. May God guard you and keep you. May God cause his light to shine upon your face all the days of your life. May he take you up on his wings and show you his peace, now and always. Amen. Mazel tov, Cassidy. Let us please remain standing for Aleinu, which we can find on page 205. עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שמנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שונות השמיים ויוסד הארץ. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו Let us please be seated. Mourners Kaddish can be found on page 207. Mourners and those serving your side, please remain standing.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמא דברה קירותי ועמליק מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. ואלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. I'd like to call upon Ronnie Levin once again, member for board of directors, for the announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. Mazel Tov to Cassidy and her family on her becoming a Bar Mitzvah. Welcome to all of you here in the sanctuary as well as online, to our online community. It's wonderful to see you. Join us for morning minyan tomorrow and Monday through Friday at 7:30 a.m. Sunday, March 7th, enjoy the TBS Sunday Fun Day Comedy Night featuring headliner Jessica Kirsten, special guest John Fish, and hosted by Eric Newman. Ticket information for this TBS fundraiser can be found on the TBS website. USY will be hosting a drive-through Purim Carnival on February 21st. The Megillah reading will be on February 25th at 6:30 p.m. February 7th at 10 a.m., Women's League will hold their annual Torah Fund event honoring Genevieve and Rabbi Hodson. Contact Melanie Greenberg for more information. Our adult education offerings for the coming week will be Radical Torah on Monday at noon, online, taught by Rabbi Felipe Goodman. Intro to Judaism, led by Rabbi Jonathan Hodson, will meet in person on Thursday at 7 p.m. If you know a temple member who is in the hospital, ill at home, or in a nursing home, please contact the temple office to let us know. Once again, Mazel Tov to Cassidy and her family. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about more what's going on with our Purim car.
Again?
Car.
You do this like every time.
Well, yeah, because it's important.
Okay, go.
Okay. So February 21st, we're doing a community-wide Purim Carnival. It's open to everybody in our Las Vegas Valley. What we're going to be doing is, as you pull up into the complex, you're going to receive a bag full of all the various toys that you need.
The complex.
The complex.
It's a temple.
Well,
I thought you were going to say the compound. Sorry.
So you're going to come driving through, and then at the gate, you're going to get a bag full of the toys that you need to play the games, the bean bags and rings and stuff. As you come driving through, there's going to be aerial artists. There's going to be a couple of different performers from Cirque du Soleil that are going to be performing, as well as various carnival games along the way as well. So it's really cool. February 21st from 12 to 2, and we invite you all to be there. I think it's going to be really great fun.
And the grand prize?
And we're working on getting, so we're doing an online raffle during the carnival as well, and hoping to raffle off a PlayStation 5.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. So yeah, you can win a PlayStation 5 for a few bucks. It's pretty cool.
Yep. Okay, thank you, DJ.
Thank
We're
you.
working very hard on it, so thank you for that. We're going to conclude our service with Adon Olam, page 211.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra v'nasa v'sokol
Azai
melech shemo nivra ve'acharei hiklot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yeh v'tifara ve'hu echad ve'ein sheni lehamshil lo le'achbira ve'li reshit ve'li tachlit ve'lo ha'oz ve'hamizra ve'hu eli ve'chai go'ali ve'tzor chevli ve'etzara ve'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi be'yom ekra be'yado Afkid ruchi ve'eti shan ve'ahira ve'im ruchi ge'vehati Adonai li
Velo ira. Let us please rise for Kiddush.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat
Lasot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם.
ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת וקדשהו ברוך
אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פורי הגפן.
Amen.
Baruch אתה
You gotta cut it.
Baruch atah Adonai,
אלוהינו מלך העולם
המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Adonai Oz Lemoiten, Adonai Yavarech et Amo Shalom. Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov to Cassidy and her family. It's great having you here. If you join us on Zoom or on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you join us from, it was wonderful having you daven with us. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Mazel Tov.